a study was done to show that women are the ones that like generally care more about the environment, because they are the ones that like give birth to children, and like they want the best for them, like for the future. And it wouldn't make sense to bring them into the world knowing that, 50 years later the world might not even exist. So I think just like having that in mind just makes more sense for more women to be at the forefront of it, because they just like have that like care and like that nurturing towards like their children. It's very important to have like women in those spaces and for their voices.
Sure, Musa, that's such a poignant point. I don't know if you've seen the chatter about the 4B movement, where women, it started in Korea, where women are absconding from, dealing with men at large, just dating, but mostly like procreating with men because of their feelings about it. That's neither here nor there. But I mentioned that because there's a lot of women who are feeling as though, actually, I'm not going to participate in creating more human beings to bring them onto this planet. To be quite honest, I'm one of them. Like, I feel like I there's no reason I couldn't live with myself bringing another human being onto this planet without their consent. I know that's a little irrational, but it's a real thing. It's part of the reason why I'm not going to have children, and then bring them onto this really devilish situation where things are looking really bleak. Hope you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'd like to look at it from a point of, how we as young girls like maybe follow in our footsteps of our mothers. So having women like in those spaces, for me it feels like it's some sort of mentorship and encouragement to say, if there's this old woman in this space, then why can't I be in it? It fosters that encouragement and mentorship in terms of young people diving into that space of climate smart or taking care of the environment. As Musa said, that women are naturally caring and nurturing, and in agriculture it seems like women are leading the agricultural space, of which to me it's incredible, and it shows their resilience, in as much as it shows like the equity in terms of having equality between men and women being in the forefront. For me, it also shows their resilience. And
amazing. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of That's What She Said. And today we're stepping into a greener future. We're going to be discussing careers that are going to build a greener future for us all, especially ones that are climate smart. So get ready to hear more about exciting careers in the field of climate smart careers. Today I'm not vibing by myself as per usual. I've got two incredible, amazing young women and girl who are really keen on the subject, and we are going to dive into it together throughout the episode. But for now, I think you guys must introduce yourselves to the audience. Who wants to start? Where do I start?
Okay, I can start.
Yes.
My name is Musa Mutsalobane. I am a grade 11 student at Parktown High School for Girls. And I'm very passionate about public speaking and debating, but more so like I really appreciate like going into like creativity and like looking for like innovative ways for looking into different ways of doing stuff. So I think looking into like the environment and looking for different ways of like solving the climate crisis, for example, is one of the ways that I'm very passionate about, like innovation and creativity.
Amazing. Can't wait to hear more about it throughout the whole episode. And you? Who are you?
Well, I'm Hope Nelisio Matiwela, and I'm a 22-year-old from Mpumalanga. I take pride in my culture and heritage. But currently, I'm residing in Joburg, trying to find greener pastures.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Trying to find greener pastures, I'm a final year student at the University of Johannesburg, studying strategic communications. And so far, so good. I'm enjoying it. I believe communication is part of what my interest and but most importantly, my background and my heritage stands out for me.
Amazing. Also can't wait to tap into that in this conversation that we're about to have. Moving on to you guys, especially, I'm in the workforce already. I have been for a while. But you are starting to think about what's going to happen for you in terms of like your career in the next, let's say, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
And when I hope you're on your last year, hopefully you're going to go into the workforce or you're going to continue with your postgrad. What kind of climate smart careers are at the forefront of your brain right now, thinking about your future and now being ready to go into the workforce, especially for young girls like yourself? Like, what kind of careers in the climate stratosphere, as it were, are you thinking about?
I think because I'm very interested in going into law, I think something along the lines of environmental policy and, holding companies accountable if they're not like upholding what they said that they would. Because some of them say that, we'll cut down our carbon emissions, for example, but they don't actually do that. So I think, for example, like holding those companies to account for actually following what they say that they are going to do in terms of helping the environment, I think is definitely on the cards.
What I find interesting about what Musa is saying is the fact that it's so interesting to see young girls actually thinking about these climate smart careers, because when you take it back to the roots, like in our local communities, there's close to none whereby you'll find a high school girl saying, I want to be an environmental scientist, an environmental lawyer, your ecologist and stuff. They're really not clued up about these kind of things. And hearing her say that to me is really interesting and proves to say this is why conversations like this are very important with young people, is just to get their mind in there and get into the smart careers that are needed. As a person who is in communications, I look at it as I would want to work as like a communications engagement officer, coordinator, something like
what
that.
What does that mean?
Whereby I'll
let us know and let them know. I know you don't know. If we don't know, maybe someone there also doesn't know.
It's just a liaison, like you'll be communicating between the community and the company and addressing the community's needs and all of that. So for me, I would use that as an opportunity to actually make sure that these companies are accountable, like Musa said, to say, what is it that you're doing actually that's sustainable? Because I need to take that and give it back to the people, because these people are actually affected by these issues. That's how I feel I could use the communication element. But at the same time, I had a rough thought whereby I was like, if I were to actually dive into these climate smart careers, I would look into mine rehabilitation specialist. It's very interesting for me to say, they've done the damage as someone who comes from a mining area. These mines have done the damage. They've dug out the coal, they did whatever because we need the electricity. Now, let's look at the rehabilitation process. Is it actually done effectively? Are we actually preserving this land for the future generations? Because from a personal perspective, I would one day like to go back to my area, having my kids and say, look, this is where mommy grew up, And by the look of things, if we don't hold them accountable and make sure that the rehabilitation process happens effectively, that might actually not happen. We might not see that place again. Yeah.
That is so, I love the synergy of it all. Musa on the side is there with the policy making and making sure things are in order. You're also there and you're communicating between the corporations and people on the ground and communities to let them know, okay, this is what's happening. So you can also enforce it on both ends. Right there's like at least 3 climate smart careers
happening.
Yeah, which is really, really incredible. Right. I mean, you've already come up with a few at the top of your head, but what other climate smart careers can you think of, even the ones that you're not personally going to rush to, but that you think are really important, particularly just to eradicate this rampant youth unemployment in this country and just unemployment issue at large? Can you think of other climate smart careers?
I think, this is quite a big one already, but I think definitely farming, but more so specifically when you're talking about women and land ownership, because I was reading this article about a lady named Juliet Luede, who is a Ugandan woman who works with women empowerment, and she tries to eradicate this entire issue of women not getting like proper land ownership. And the reason why she started this was because she was inspired by her mother, who rightfully bought land, but then the broker that she was working with, for some reason, just didn't want to give it to her. And it was probably mainly because she was just a woman, and he himself just thought that she probably doesn't even know how to use this land. So even if she's like rightfully bought it, I'm not going to give it to her. So with the work that she does, she tries to like help the youth and the young women in her community to become more independent in terms of like using the land well and knowing how to use it. So I think definitely like farming is like it's a very good skill to know, but I think just not the right people know like what to do with it, especially with like youth unemployment and everything. So I think that's definitely something that more people need to look into. But I think,
which is so wild, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you think of farming, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I grew up in a township back in KZN. Even though it was a township, there was still, I don't know, maybe our grandmothers were still very connected to the olden times and how to do things in that way. Mm-hmm. Lots of people used to be able to just like plant food in their backyards. Mm-hmm. Even now, I think there is also a drive to also plant, just to even learn, or just to have it as like second nature, or to train that muscle of like, you have a piece of land, plant something. It doesn't have to be this massive thing, just so that you can also educate yourself and also younger people that are coming after you. Like even for young kids, if you have a bed of roses, instead you can just remove it and add like I don't know, orange trees or cabbage, spinach. Those things grow really fast.
Yeah.
And kids know exactly where food comes from, and they have an appreciation for land and the importance of it, and they already know exactly where it comes from, because it comes from there. When mom is cooking and she's like, yeah, please get me some time there, you quickly run outside and you grab it for her. And dad, it's not mom, just that just cooks. And yeah, so I think it's interesting that you're saying that there's like a miseducation, or people just feel like they're disempowered with knowledge when it comes to that, when it feels to me like before it used to be something that was just second nature, that we everyone has a garden.
Natural, yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What other climate smart careers would you suggest even for our audience to tap into or think about tapping into?
For me, it has to be like waste management. It is really a big thing whereby people don't take notice of the waste around them and stuff, which actually reminds me of this other project that we worked in this other module, whereby we're supposed to come up with a proposal. So initially what we came up with was, we want to start a Food Connect, whereby we're distributing food, but we'll be partnering with local farms, because farms produce a lot of waste that we're not aware, which sometimes gets destroyed and whatnot. So the initial plan of the entire initiative was to collaborate with local farms and say, hey, we know that you guys have waste. Instead of destroying it or whatnot, polluting the environment and all of that, give it to us and let us work with it. And from whatever that we find there, if it's still usable, we actually distribute it to people who are actually in need. But at the same time, we're not just giving them, but also educate them in terms of how you can actually do this for yourself. So it provided a lot of agricultural education, while at the same time minimizing waste, and also zero poverty, zero hunger. People would actually be eating the food, consuming it. So it really tapped into omitting those sustainable development goals a step closer to saying zero hunger and everything. It was an interesting project to be part of, even though it was not well executed at the end, but it opened a mindset into terms of, there is actually a lot of waste around us. What are we doing about it?
Incredible. I love that, because, I mean, I don't know about you, were you still thinking about, you said law policy making, which I love, because then you're attaching it to the environment. Because before it used to just be like, you can be an attorney, or you can just go to court fighting people's lives. Maybe, find family planning there. So I love that you're now bringing it back into fighting for the environment. And before, the jobs that we could think about at the top of our heads, so you're a teacher, you're a doctor, you are a nurse, See, I'm struggling to think about like what else is there, but there's just such a massive variety. And I mean, truly for me, it's also about redirecting where we already are. Much like Musa, you mentioned about the law's always been there, justice is always going to be there. It's just more shifting the focus a little bit to environment. For me, I'm a storyteller. Recently heard of a story of a woman, I think she's in Nigeria, who does incredible fish farming. It also taps into the land, because you do need land in order to be able to host this entire like fish farm. And instead of like going into the oceans and over farming fish, she's farming them in the back of her house once again, which is really, really incredible. And for me as a storyteller, instead of focusing a lot on like the sensationalized stories and whatever the bad people really click on, sometimes it's really okay to think about, what good are people doing in order to assist the world really in this ever changing climate, and then focus on those stories as well. So you could actually create a beat where it's like, yeah, sharp, I'm a journalist, but my actual focus, my niche is this, and just only focus on climate smart stories and that sort of thing. So I really do think it's also important to not even just be afraid of where you are and think, oh my gosh, it's the age of the AI, that means my job is going to be kaput soon. No, just embrace it, be part of it, and shift your focus a little bit, and you'll find there's ample room to grow career-wise, and that could take you into the future. You don't have to be left behind.
As my biggest concern is actually giving out knowledge. So having those kind of stories out there, you as a storyteller writing about those stories, it's actually informing those people on the ground. Like, it's very important, because people are really clueless about this kind of stuff. It's worrying.
Our next question, which I feel like we should all dive into: how do you think young people can learn more about climate smart careers?
I think, obviously there is like ways of like doing research, but I think also going into your communities and learning more about like the environment that you live in. Like the video that we just watched about the women using their indigenous knowledge about how they were able to use these plants for tea and everything. So I think the first step would definitely be like doing your research, but I think secondly, like learning more about like what's around you, because I think many people think that things like farming means that you need to buy like this huge plot of land and everything, but as you said, it's something that's as simple as doing it in your backyard. So I think people just need to learn that it's not as inaccessible as they think that it is, and it's just learning about your environment and taking it from there.
And I know for you, Hope, specifically, it's as simple as, you grew up in a mining town. It's also just being conscious of the environment, because all the interest that you have about combating the stuff that the mines have done to your community comes from you having lived there.
Yeah.
Like, is there anything else that you want to pursue in that career of just dealing with what the mining towns that you're from, people getting sick from the coal that's being used there? I mean, particularly if you look at South Africa with the electricity crisis, it doesn't look like we have money to move away from coal. So it looks like it's going to be staying for a while. Are there any suggestions for even people from, let's say, Emalahleni or Creole? Like, what other suggestions could you have for them in terms of careers where they could go and find information on what to do about their own situation?
Well, Thando, that's actually a difficult one, because as I've mentioned, people on the ground are actually clueless. They don't know anything at all, and they don't even question themselves as to say, why is this actually happening? So for me, in order to encourage young people or where to get information, it all starts in that desk. It all starts in that grade 10, grade 11, whereby the emphasis is placed to say, guys, be cautious of what is happening around you. There isn't enough emphasis around these topics, because if I were to tell you about the last time I had like anything about climate change was in grade 8, whereby we were planting trees, where we had something about save water. We had a play, save water, conserve water, water is our life, and that was it, you know. So there isn't enough, in as much as they have to do their own research, but I also take it to the education system to say, place more emphasis on this conversation because it's very important and it's affecting our people, you know. And also those companies that are actually doing these things like the mines, I also hold them accountable to say, so they have these programs where they give bursaries to students, and most of those bursaries emphasize engineering, metallurgy, and all of that. What's happening to the environment? Why don't you want to have an environmental specialist, or why don't you give out a bursary for this? Because you need that person in the company. Then why don't you do it? So finding information, it all lies within people questioning themselves, being curious and cautious of what's happening in their environment, but it also goes down to other stakeholders like the government, the companies, and
Absolutely. The government absolutely does have to collaborate with people on the ground, because they are also participating. They're participating in bending the call there. And just before we go into our next segment, I wonder what you think about what the role of women is in leading the charge in the conversation of, climate smart careers.
So I think there definitely needs, number one, there definitely needs to be more women moving into those spaces, because I think the issue is that there's so few women currently like in STEM and, like those environmental spaces, just because they're just like so saturated with men and they're scared that their voices aren't going to be heard within those spaces. So firstly, like we just need to get more women like and encourage them to move into those spaces. And then I think once they get into those spaces, I think the responsibility that they sort of have is to like encourage other young girls to also like get into those spaces and not be scared that they're not going to like find a place within those spaces. And then I think after that, like coming up with like fresh perspectives, because I think the unique thing with women being in like environmental spaces and like talking about those types of issues is because a study was done to show that women are the ones that like generally care more about the environment, because they are the ones that like give birth to children and like they want the best for them, like for the future. And it wouldn't make sense to bring them into the world knowing that 50 years later the world might not even exist. So I think just like having that in mind just makes more sense for more women to be at the forefront of it, because they just like have that like care and like that nurturing towards like their children, like more generations to come, and just in general for the environment. So I think it's very important to have like women in those spaces and for their voices.
Sure, Musa, that's such a poignant point. I don't know if you've seen the chatter about the 4B movement, where women, it started in Korea, where women are absconding from, dealing with men at large, just dating, but mostly like procreating with men because of their feelings about it. That's neither here nor there. But I mentioned that because there's a lot of women who are feeling as though, actually, I'm not going to participate in creating more human beings to bring them onto this planet. To be quite honest, I'm one of them. Like, I feel like I there's no reason I couldn't live with myself bringing another human being onto this planet without their consent. I know that's a little irrational, but it's a real thing. It's part of the reason why I'm not going to have children, and then bring them onto this really devilish situation where things are looking really bleak. So I love what you're saying about women actually taking the charge, because if they do, then it trickles down even with the education that you're talking about, Hope. When they see, other women are doing it, then also me, I don't need to be afraid, I don't need to be scared. The only people that I see is Ufriki with his hat and his bum shorts and long socks in these industries, but I can also see Bomama the video that we watched, that they were also beyond capable of leading the charge in these careers. Yeah. Hope you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'd like to look at it from a point of, how we as young girls like maybe follow in our footsteps of our mothers. So having women like in those spaces, for me, it feels like it's some sort of mentorship and encouragement to say, if there's this old woman in this space, then why can't I be in it? You know, it fosters that encouragement and mentorship in terms of young people diving into that space of climate smart or taking care of the environment. As Musa said, that women are naturally caring and nurturing, and in agriculture it seems like women are leading the agricultural space, of which to me it's incredible, and it shows their resilience, you know, in as much as it shows like the equity in terms of having equality between men and women being in the forefront. For me, it also shows their resilience, and yeah.
Amazing. I think that sums it up essentially, and it brings us to our interview with a guest. We've been sharing our opinions so far. A guest who is doing exactly what we're talking about. She's a woman, and then she's the founder of a metro farming company. And we've been talking a lot about land and needing acres and acres of land. And you spoke about it doesn't always have to be that. And she's doing exactly that. We're going to go into an interview with Opalite Andiswa, and to tell us more about what it means to metro farm. What do you mean you are farming in the middle of a city? What does that entail? And how can other girls, other young women get into it? Yeah.
That's what she said.
I have a very professional background with a degree in BSc or Bachelor of Science and also MBA. So with that knowledge, it makes it possible to actually step into new things and learn anew and be able to grow in any other space within the agriculture sector. Working for Sibayeni Metro Farming in South Africa. This is a company that focuses on manufacturing hydroponic systems that we use for production, and the systems that we use help us to be able to grow our food from the ground going up. We do not touch the soil, or we do not use the soil when doing the production. And also that we get to save water, because water has become a challenge, whether you live in the city or you live in rural areas. We are a biodiversity incubation company that hosts young graduates. So when the graduates come from university, they only have theory, they do not have practical knowledge and experience in doing the farming. We specialize in making sure that that is done.
So we have Polite Koza with us to give us some insight on the work that she does in metro farming. I think my biggest question is, how did you stumble upon metro farming, and how did you decide, actually these ones who are farming back in the lallies, they are playing games. We are living in the cities, so we want to be able to farm even in the cities. How did you come about starting this career and even finding a company to do this work?
Tando, what a question. With the background that I have, I actually never liked agriculture. Agriculture has always been used as a punishment, you know. In most of our African schools, when you did not perform well in class, or you did not do your homework, or you did not dress the uniform properly, the punishment has always been you go to the garden. And I'm one of those learners who never, or young people who never liked agriculture because it was a punishment. Agriculture has always been seen as a sector that is done and managed by people who are at a low literacy level. So as a result, as we grow and getting educated, agriculture was one of the things that we left behind because we thought that it's for uneducated people. However, with the background that I have in studying the Bachelor of Science in Environmental Management, I realized over the years that I could not connect properly with environmental management projects. So I worked in the municipality, I worked in the provincial government departments, and in all that, environmental management always emanated from agriculture. And that's how my career and my business was built from the agriculture, because that's how we were able to identify challenges that our country is experiencing, things like pollution that will come from whatever fertilizers that we put when we produce our food, things like runoff that will pollute our rivers would emanate from agriculture. And as a result, I saw agriculture as one of the solutions that says, if I have done well on this one, I will be able to succeed. And tell you what, Tando, I over the years, I actually started doing farming the normal way as any other farmer will do, like putting the seed on the ground, waiting for the miracle to happen when it rains, and voila, we have our food in the basket and we are harvesting. But over the years, especially as we get affected by the impact of climate change, I'm one of those who lost a lot of produce and the farm itself due to the impact of climate change, where we had heavy floods that washed off our farm, and it was difficult to start afresh. And with the background that I already had, the knowledge that I already had, I started investigating how other countries are surviving, especially those countries that have very bad weather conditions or extreme weather conditions, wherein the heavy rain, the rainy season will be very heavy. The heat will also be extremely high. How do they make it? And as I started visiting those countries, learning how they do it, it got much easier to actually come up with a project that never required that I leave the city where I'm staying, but I continue to create something that will make it possible to live within the city and produce where I stay.
Also, I'm not by myself. I have these two young ladies next to me who also have lots of questions for you. Do you want to go ahead, Musa?
So I personally know like what hydroponics is, but I don't think many people know what it is, especially if they're going to be doing it like in their homes, like in the cities. So do you mind just explaining like how that works, especially within a home environment?
Musa, thank you so much for that question. Hydroponics is one of the initiatives that came with innovation and technology. So it's one of the young innovations that are happening in the 2000s that have never been seen by farmers who have been farming for decades. You and I live in an information age, which actually has made it possible for one to be able to learn this way. From the knowledge that I had, I actually took time to visit different countries and learn from there. I did not take what the way they produce or what they are doing exactly as it is, because I could not afford it. So, like when I go to countries like Korea and China, they are very much advanced. They have the financial resource and the backup of government to be able to succeed. So for me to be able to start, I had to scale down the vision that I had in mind to be able to operate in the space where I'm in. And hydroponics itself is a process where maybe let me explain a plant first, how plants grow. For a plant to grow, it requires air, it requires nutrients, and it requires water. When a plant has these three things, regardless of where it is, it is able to grow. So what we do in hydroponics is we create an environment. So we create a system where we can put in that plant. Now the plant is in the system. It needs support. So the hydroponic system will give the support to hold the plant. It's no longer held by the soil, but it is held by the system. Then we automate the circulation of water, because in the soil, the plant will stretch its roots searching for water. So here we provide the water to the plant. But in addition to that, we provide the nutrients in a soluble form that will make it easy for the plant to absorb from the roots. So the advantage with doing that is our plants get to grow in a protected environment. In addition to that, remember this metro farming, we do it in the city, meaning we don't have the hundreds of hectares where we are able to plant. So bringing it in the system called hydroponics enables us to now grow from the ground. We stack it up like steps. We're going up to the roof. Therefore, we are able to plant more in the hydroponics. So hydroponics brings in the ability to maximize space, to save water as well, and to save the nutrients. So now I don't go 50 hectares, but I'm working within the space where I am, and it's a very small space.
I know you do a lot of training to bring in people and show them what you do, much like we're doing right now, just trying to probe and find out more about it. Do you have any success stories of people that you have trained who've gone on to do the same work? What have they done? What does it look like? And how do you feel about having taught somebody from the ground up to do exactly what you do?
Working with young people, the young mind is always eager to learn. And because the young mind has not stumbled into problems and mistakes, it's easy to teach a young person a new thing, and they get excited and they get on it. But how I got to gain interest in working with young people, I actually got exposed to or working in partnership with universities within our country. And I have learned, I'm also one of those who went through university, wherein I only learned a textbook or a study guide, wherein there was nothing practical. You only just read what a person has done years ago, and you are given a certificate and you are told you now know agriculture. And then you get to the real environment now, wherein the agriculture has to happen. You realize that agriculture is a very practical subject, and it is not doable with the knowledge that you have taken from the book. So often when we come from university, between university and work, there would actually be that gap of a space of ignorance, because we do not know how to apply what we have learned. This partnership with the university then enabled us to be able to create an experiential learning, where now a young person from university who has learned theory cannot be graduated unless they have done some practical work. So then it means after 3 years of university, they come to us, they do the theory, the practical, and then they go back and be graduated. So we have been certified to be part of the learning curve. So that's how I started with doing trainings and experiential learning with young people. So the success stories comes from seeing a young person start a business, or a young person getting an opportunity to in the marketplace to to work and do.
You know how it is very difficult to engage young people in those conversations? Is there a way or a platform where you are having these training sessions in maybe a digital platform, in an interesting, fun way whereby young people would actually be interested to listen, because these are serious conversations and most young people will be like, boring. So do you have a digital platform where you introduce these kind of topics to young people?
Young people have the advantage of technology that helps us to be able to create and to connect so that we are able to share knowledge and to be able to take lessons. So whatever your parents did not do right, it's easy for you to just step on their shoulders and learn from their mistakes and build from there and be able to do better. So what I can advise you to do is be open to learning at all times. Learn from the previous generation, learn from the current generation, and use that information to create a future for your next generation. If we are able currently to get in a warehouse and make shoes and make a car, we can be able to get in a warehouse and produce food. So what is required is the mind that will be committed to success, not the mind that will be committed to consuming what other people has produced, but the one that will produce what we are able to consume. So all I'm saying is, young as you are, take up the space and create the future for yourself and for the generation that's coming after you, regardless of where you live or the resources that you have. Believe me, everywhere where you are, there is something that you can be able to use. And I advise that you start exactly where you are.
Thank you so much, Palette, for joining us and giving us all your insights that you've worked hard for, that you should, some people want to gatekeep it, but you are just so free with it, giving it to us. We truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
And just in closing, I think we must dive into how we can actually support and encourage young women to get into climate smart careers. As governments, as ourselves, as citizens, as just everyone. How do you think we can go about doing that, Musa?
I think at least like on a high school level, I think the responsibility is to like put more focus on it and like put more of a spotlight on it like in high school already, so that when people are like deciding on like which universities to go to and like what exactly they want to do, that it's an option and it's not just one that's just been left in the dark the entire time, but it's one that they can actually consider because like they've been given that opportunity to learn more about it. So I think definitely putting a spotlight on it in high school, and I think it's also like the government's responsibility also like put out the bursaries for like those opportunities into university and to encourage people to actually go into those careers as well. So yeah.
Well, for me, like I said, where I come from is really rooted in me. So in terms of I'd want like young people to understand that addressing these burning issues that they face on a daily basis cannot be an issue of just addressing them, but can be an opportunity for a career in the future and make money out of it, make a living out of it. So it's really important for young people to actually dive into these climate smart careers. And just to throw it into the ladies, Lalela, there's nothing we cannot do, okay?
Hey, that's what she said.
That's what I'm saying. So those climate smart
100%.
careers, we belong there as well.
Absolutely. And not only are we helping to aid and help the environment to be in a good place, and we're also making money on the side. That's so sweet.
Exactly. We need it.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Truly, that's it for this episode of That's What She Said. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and then come back for more intel on just all things green future, all things orange future, all things blue future. Come back on here to get some more intel on that. Thank you so much for joining, and that's what she said.